So I am very excited to have all of you here this evening. This is crazy. I'm excited to have all of you in one space. Man, we have authors and pastors and shakers and movers and world travelers and peacemakers, mediators and bosses, entrepreneurs, husbands, uncles, sons. You guys are doing some amazing work. So I want to take a moment and want to say hello to everyone who wanted to chime in.
Hey.
Thank you so much for tuning into this live webinar. I'm excited about this space, this opportunity. Listen, I'm just glad to be one of the number today. I want you guys to take a moment, just really quick, introduce yourself, some things that you're working on, where you've been, where you are, and why are you here? Why are we talking about this today? What is kind of your stake in this dialogue, this conversation?
Okay.
Let's start with John.
All right. Hello, everybody. How y'all doing? Everybody good? Can y'all hear me? All right, good.
I hear you.
All right, cool. My name is John Martin. I'm out at Des Moines, Iowa. Mr. Robert, he gave me a call and wanted to see if I wanted to be a part of this webinar, and I was ecstatic. I'm all for it. I love what's going on here, the camaraderie, with y'all fellas. I'm looking forward to getting to know y'all a little more. One thing I didn't know is that you all were authors. So when I seen the flyer today, that just kind of bugged me out. That was something special. So I'm definitely going to keep that as a keepsake. But I'm out at Des Moines, Iowa. I am a published author. I do run a marketing company as well called Team Strong Inc. And I'm born and raised in Des Moines, father of two, 20-year-old son, 13-year-old daughter that drives me crazy. She's going on 40,
Come on.
Besides that, I'm just enjoying life, living life, and just here to listen and share a little bit. So
that's what's up. Does it get easier as they get older?
My son was a breeze. My daughter, she's on a whole nother level. I wasn't ready for this. I really wasn't. But I'm up for the challenge every day. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So. Awesome.
My experience is little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems.
Oh gosh.
No, but it is true that everyone's different. The kids take different paths, and so that's not ironclad, Robert, but. There's some realities there.
Oh man, I'm in trouble. Right. Rick, why don't you go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself?
My name is Rick Love, and I grew up in Southern California, lived in England, Indonesia, been around the world. I've been a pastor, a missionary, and then a peacemaker the last 10 years of my life. I've been dedicated to making peace, especially between Christians and Muslims. I have 3 amazing daughters. I mean, make it happen kind of amazing women. And I've got 6 grandchildren, 2 grandsons, and my 2-year-old grandson's already doing karate. It's kind of just for different reasons, but anyway, so that's me. My dad was a judge. So how'd you like to stand before Judge Love? At least, sounds good.
Awesome. So, Rick, we're glad to have you. Darnell, last but not least.
Oh, man, feeling good. 17 years as an educator, 10 years as an administrator. I'm currently assistant principal in the Plainfield Area School District. So I do that by day. CEO and president of Lead One, which is a leadership development company that my wife and I started in 2013. My heart and passion is to help men in particular in their various transitions of manhood. The transition from a single guy to a seriously dating guy, to a married guy, to now I have children, and what does it mean to start a legacy or leave a legacy? Because I believe everybody's in one or two stages. Either you're blazing a trail or you're starting a trail. Everybody has a choice to do one or the other. So it can either start with you or you could be continuing it. And I'm one who has been determined to start a legacy of being a strong husband and a strong father and have a pleasure of traveling the country and traveling the world inspiring other men to do the same. So excited to be here.
Awesome. Good. Well, I'm glad that you guys, you brothers, are here. I just want to jump right in. Part of my story has been I didn't necessarily grow up with my father. Didn't grow up with a father. I come to find out he's alive, 25 years old. But going through the various transitions of life, I had to really define, or had a hard time defining what it meant to be a man.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to throw that question out there, no specific order. What in the most kind of precise way, what do you guys, what is your definition? What does it mean to be a man?
If I could chime in, rising to the occasion. I think a lot of times as men, it's tempting to become passive, regardless of what obstacles coming your way, regardless of what situation you're having to deal with. How do you rise to the occasion? And it's a delicate balance of how do I assert myself, but not become dominating? Once again, whether I'm leading my family, whether I'm leading an organization, how do I not punk out? How do I not shrink back? How do I rise to the occasion so that the people under my sphere of influence can be empowered? I think that's what makes a real man. You empower other people. Even in the midst of your own fear and uncertainty, how do you navigate those emotions productively? Because a lot of times as men, we lash out because we're fearful. Every man's scared at some point, but how do you harness that emotion and still meet the challenge? I think that's what it identifies manhood in my eyes.
Okay. Don, what are you thinking? I see the brain going there.
Darnell pretty much summed it up. I would like to piggyback and say, to me, it's more or less just standing up, period.
No doubt.
Just being able to stand up. And by standing up, that means, we naturally, by nature, us men, we take care of our surroundings, period.
Right.
We're just natural born protectors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's around us, especially us as fathers. I mean, we just like if some kids are around, like we just instinctively, naturally just father them if no one else is around, basically, So, just standing up, rising to the occasion, and being able to take care of ourselves as far as how we think, by reading the right things, even mental nourishment, by eating the right foods, everything that is instilled in us. That way we can give out the right aura to our surroundings and who we're around. So just taking care of ourselves and standing up. Our presence alone is crucial, whether we're doing right or wrong.
Yeah.
Whoever's around us is learning from us because we're men.
One of the texts in scripture that I've used many times to meet with young men, my nephews and others, is 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14. I'll read it quickly, just share briefly. It says, be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong. And then it says, let all that you do be done in love.
That's good.
And now I'll tell you why this is so important to me and why I like to impart this to young men. Be on the alert. There is real evil. I don't have to tell you guys that.
Right.
There's a real devil. There's real issues.
Yeah.
We have to be, and I love what you said, John. We're natural protectors, and we're going to blaze trails, Darnell, and these kind of things. Be on the alert, then stand firm in the faith. I'm sharing from a Christian perspective. That's my faith background. But then be courageous and strong. I think that is, in some ways, that so resonates with men. You got to be a badass, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
But why I like this verse is kick butt, take names. I mean, be strong, be courageous. But then it says, let all that you do be done in love. So it's like, whoa, wait a second here.
Right.
So,
you messed me up.
Yeah. I'm Dr. Love, but I tell younger men I'm the love doctor. But the point is here to me is it has this one verse is it kind of summarizes some of the things John and Darnell are saying. And I'm coming at it from the experience of relating to other women and or just defining yourself. I am a man. I'm tough. I can do this.
That's good.
And that's beautiful. But that's not all. That So to me, to put all that together, is man. It's a man I can respect.
That's good.
If someone is strong and courageous, and yet they're showing love. That's how we empower people, right, Darnell?
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
So I want to ask this question because I've had a unique journey into manhood, and part of what I do as well is advocacy for men who've experienced sexual trauma.
No doubt.
Now, when you start getting into those issues, those conversations, those dialogue, this definition takes on a different connotation. It doesn't necessarily change, but it looks drastically different. And I think part of the journey and part of what I kind of want to hear your feedback is about is that oftentimes when we think of masculinity or manhood, it's normally, at least in more Western cultures, it's more, we think cowboys and Indians. We think more strength. We think more, just more, there's a Hispanic word, machismo. We think of this kind of tough, rough guy that is kind of the epitome of masculinity, manhood. And what that does is that definition, my argument,
yes.
Because, let's just say, there's a guy or a young boy, a young teen who may not have grown up with his father, may have been around women his whole life, has mannerisms a little bit more softer, a little bit more, then we kind of, if they don't fit into that context of strong, masculine, healthy, maybe he's scrawny, he's skinny, he doesn't have muscle, then what does this definition look like? And because, and I'm interested in your response, because for me, a long time, a survivor of sexual trauma myself, I would get around men in an attempt to be a part, but feel like I didn't identify or didn't belong because I didn't fit the kind of, I don't want to use the word toxic, but the general kind of masculine, robust terminology or definition of what it meant to be a man. So how can you speak to that? How do we include our brothers who are in transition or on a journey to wholeness? How do we speak to them as they express and as they choose to try to reclaim their authentic manhood and masculinity? What does that mean for them?
Well, I think I'll start off. I think a lot of times it's what's the template you're referencing. So I think, Rick did a great job, once again, as a believer, in the scripture, you have an idea of manhood where Christ was both, the strongest that you can be, taking, whips and thorns and on the cross and risking it all. But he did it from a place of love. So I think if love is driving your strength, then, for example, as a husband of 15 years, I'm at my strongest point when I'm at my most sacrificial moment. So I'm at my strongest when I'm empowering my wife to be all that she can be. My strength is not in her saying, woman, you better. My strength is in saying, babe, what can I do to support you? Because as I support you and show that strength, then the people around me are better for it. So I think a lot of times in previous generations, we had this idea that my strength must dominate you and express you so I can be strong. But I think in the new generation, we're helping the current generations that follow us understand it's not so much me dominating you, but how can my strength empower you? So, I mean, you hear me say that a lot tonight, but a real man makes others stronger, makes others better, brings the best out of other people. So as we get those young men who are transitioning and evolving and growing, they need something to reference. And I think that's where we come in as leaders in our households and our communities. How do we empower them and give them an example of what a husband looks like, what a father looks like, what a community leader looks like, so they're not making it up as they go. So
I think that's powerful. I think one of the things that I want to kind of point to is that fathers, or not fathers, but one of my working definitions of what it means to be a man, I think for me is I found healing, and I don't want to get too preachy here, but I found healing where there was a passage of scripture that talks about in my weakness, strength is made perfect. And so the sum total of me and my masculinity is not how strong I can be,
right,
but also how I can be honest and be true that in my weakness, that in Christ, I don't have to be strong.
Right.
He is strong for me.
And through you.
Exactly.
No doubt.
And so that was kind of one of my definitions or my working kind of revelations that I kind of worked through to kind of help cope with coming into authentic masculinity, manhood. Now, I kind of want to flip this. I've noticed that a lot of working definitions of that men have are not healthy, right?
Not at all.
Are not healthy. And I think, John, you talk about some of this in your book about your journey and even raising your son, is that when men don't have a template, when men don't have an example, they kind of have to figure it out on their own.
No doubt about it.
Raising men, to be honest, is women are, and not saying women can't, there are single mothers out here that are killing it, but a lot of working definitions are coming from unhealthy, toxic places.
Yeah.
So what it means to be a man, in most cases, I've worked in higher ed and education for a while. And so, normally it's their peers, it's other men,
right?
Or sometimes it's porn, sometimes it's so many other things. So how did you, John, kind of press through all of the negative, unhealthy, toxic definition of what it means to be a man, and not only a man, but to also become a father?
Yeah.
No doubt.
Well, it's interesting that you bring this up because it's definitely needs to be talked about. One thing that I think is very, very important is just to define the word respect. And when we do that, that sets a foundation to where we have a better understanding of what's around us.
Right.
Because if I'm able to understand your situation and respect that, then I'm able to deal with you on all kinds of different levels. I'm able to communicate with you.
Right.
But the problem is a lot of times that a lot of our youth, they're not learning respect at an early age.
Right.
They have a totally different definition of what respect is. Like somebody steps on their shoe or something and they don't apologize. And, that's a whole different, avenue that they take because of the respect thing. But if we educate these kids early to say, hey, look, you're going to be sitting in class. Like for example, you referenced my book. I had to explain to my son at an early age, hey, look, man, you're being raised by a man.
Right.
A lot of the people that you're going to school with, you're going to argue. You're going to go back and forth with them because they're being raised by women. And nothing wrong with women at all. It's just they have a different mindset. 9 times out of 10, if you sit at a table with a bunch of women, it's going to be totally different dialogue than if you were to sit with a group of men. So he's learning that dialogue at an early age of how our mannerisms are different and this and that. So going into a public setting where you're in a school, you got to have an understanding of what's around you, you know, and as long as you respect what's around you, then you're able to deal with it. You're able to move around, you know, just as long as you're aware, you know. And I think that's important. That we're not teaching. A lot of us, I think, teach in a selfish way to where, you know, you're coming out and you want this respect and you want people to know about you and your struggles, but you're not understanding about, you know, the people around you. You see what I'm saying? And that's where I took that approach with my son to explain, you know, even with like people on drugs, like drug usage, you know, people act different, you know, so you got to understand how to move around them. You got to be a psychologist, basically, you know, and learn people's moods and this and that. So when you understand what you're around, you tend to form a respect for it.
That's good.
You tend to form a respect for it. So, you know,
very good.
And in turn, if you respect yourself and you respect your differences, then of course you're going to respect the next man's differences,
right?
And respect that, because we all have a different journey. So as long as we learn that from the gate, from the jump,
right,
you know, it'll be easier to work through.
Good stuff.
That is a great word, Robert. I'd like to footnote previously the definition: be strong, be courageous. You said, how does it relate to these? That doesn't mean the size of your biceps,
right?
Or you know, that your strength. It takes real strength and courage to deal with your heart issues, to deal with your addictions, to deal with your wounds and hurts. I have the privilege of having siblings, a brother and sister, and we love each other, and they come and visit me a lot, and especially during the time of cancer. And we have these conversations, and we're like 50s, 60s. And so we're saying, okay, what's causing you to do what you do unintentionally? In other words, you have wounds and issues. And it takes strength and courage to begin to open up to others, find counseling. So, Robert, I don't want to be misunderstood. When I talked about that verse, it takes huge strength of character.
No doubt.
And courage in our character to deal with our issues.
So I wanna put a pin in that right there. Let's have a real conversation.
Come on.
What are kind of some of the things that you guys have had to work through, and you guys have had to press through because we're looking at now, you know, successful men who have raised children, who have careers, grandchildren, businesses. But this is towards, you know, more of the glorious side of the story. So what were those hardships? What were those challenges? What were those kind of those moments where you just kind of were like
I think for me, anger issues, you know, growing up in an environment of domestic violence and just inner city, West Side Chicago, you're just seeing a lot of survival mode tactics and techniques and strategies, just trying to make it. And I think the thing that made me most angry, I think, was early on when I first got married. You know, I was 24, my wife was 22, so we're young. And I think my inability to conflict resolution, I didn't have the coping skills to have a resolute conversation to say, I'm pissed off and here's why. Because real men, I didn't see many examples of, in my anger, how do I effectively communicate? So I found myself being angry, but lacking tools to communicate why. I felt disrespected. Not that she even disrespected me, but I was internalizing that as disrespect because of issues I didn't deal with in my childhood. You know what I'm saying? I didn't see my mom and dad model that back and forth interaction. So then when I got married, I'm like, man, how do I navigate what I've never seen? I always tell people it's very difficult to replicate what you've never seen. And we expect young men who come from broken families to then just miraculously have a quality whole family when they've never seen it. So I think these kind of conversations are extremely vital to say, hey, how are you navigating your anger issues even as a husband, even as a business owner, even as a professional, we still have some gaps and some holes in our development that if we're not honest and careful, that's how people just bubble up and lose it one day because they've never been able to cope with the small opportunities to resolve conflict. So I think that was one thing I'm still dealing with. But early on, I didn't even know I was dealing with it. I just knew I was just angry all the time.
Yeah.
So if I'm gonna be real.
I want to continue to hear you guys because Martin, John, Rick, I want to hear your stories. But Darnell, I want to press into that a little bit more. Yeah. We talked about young men. So what do you say to a man who is, like you said, 24, 25, 26, 30, 35, 40, who may have not done the work that you've done yet, and is still angry, who's still hurt, who's still upset, they got bad relationships, can't keep, maybe they're even abusive, maybe they've been abused. Where do they start? How does that journey start?
First thing is just acknowledging that you're angry. The first thing is acknowledging that you know you have gaps. I think as men, we have to be humble enough to say, the things I should have experienced, I didn't experience. Some of the things I did see, I should have never seen, and acknowledging that first and foremost. Because if you don't acknowledge that there's work to be done, you'll never have the stamina and the perseverance to put in the work. So I think that's vital that we acknowledge that there's work to be done, and then being humble enough to surround yourself with men who are further along than you are, maybe not in age, but in experience and the developmental, so that you can say, okay, who's holding me accountable? I think one of my strongest testaments as a man is being able to say, I know that I need other men to sharpen me and and encourage me and to call me out on my crap when I'm not doing what I know I need to be doing as a husband and father.
Now I'm gonna ask you this now, okay, and I'm gonna get in trouble here because I'm gonna go to the rest. I know a man right now.
Come on.
Almost 50 some odd years old.
Yeah.
And with his wife, he's harsh, he's very dominating.
No doubt.
But when he gets around other men, he doesn't like accountability. He doesn't like how do you speak to that? How do we help this guy?
I'll let some of the other fellas chime in and I'll come back.
Okay.
Go for it, John.
How do we help a guy that just really doesn't want to listen or take responsibility
because let me rephrase the question. When you have someone who's not used to authentic manhood, masculinity, Rick said something earlier, men who have real strength. And when we talk about strength, not my biceps, not my triceps, not the size of my penis, not how I can please a woman, but strength to deal with the inner,
no doubt,
inner demons, the inner struggles, the conflicts.
Yeah.
How do we help him? And even John, you speaking on this because in your book you talk about your journey from and being an alcoholic and dealing with different issues and kind of overcoming. How do you do that? How do we help this guy?
Yeah.
Well, first, you got to let him grow on his own to a certain extent. You got to just listen to him because he's gonna allow you to guide him in his own way, but he's got to be comfortable. Everybody has to be comfortable.
I'm tired of listening, John. I'm tired. I've been listening for years. How do we move this? How do we move this guy or this person to want to be want to be better, to want to do better when he feels like he's at his best and this is it? And I don't want to spend too much time here because I want to continue to go on and kind of delve into the rest.
Mind if I chime in?
Yeah, go.
So I would say you have to expose him to how he's impacting other people. Each of us said that a man is a protector. So if you are able to put a mirror up to him and say, hey, here's how you're impacting your wife, your children, your coworkers. Here's how you're negatively impacting each of these people that you say you love because you're not willing to resolve your issues. And if you can bring him face to face with how he's negatively impacting others, he may not do it for him, but he'll do it for those he loves. He'll do it for those he cares about. So I think sometimes you just have to bring him to that harsh reality of, man, you are messing up a lot of people because you're being stubborn, because you're being ignorant, because you're being hard-hearted. And hopefully that is enough to jar his attention to say, man, if I couldn't do it for myself, I got to do it for the people I love the most.
That's dope. That's dope.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know, what are some of the challenges you've had to come through? Because, we know Dr. Rick Love, the Love Doctor.
No doubt.
And all your, but what are some of those personal? I'm interested. I want
Well, mine, I just come from a different world, and so it's not so exciting or sexy. But as I was thinking about this, I've been on this path to leadership. It's interesting. I was chosen, even though I've always been a leader. Someone said, yes, you need to lead this group or do this. And so, and I found that leadership is pain bearing. It's not just cool and empowerment, but you take shots, and someone, you need to be soft-hearted and thick-skinned.
Yeah.
And so for me, my journey has been, as I shared, from a pastor, missionary to peacemaker. And everywhere I went, I realized I am trying to help people reconcile. And so then I think Darnell was sharing, maybe not with the rest of the people, but before we got on this public forum, about his past and journaling, how he had to work through stuff. I had to work through, what does it mean to follow Jesus and really be a peacemaker?
Yeah.
What does it mean to lead in a way that pleases him and empowers people, loves people, and yet strong enough? And so I've gone through real intense times of humility before the Lord, brokenness in terms of, I remember you said we can be real here, and this is my story. So it's not movie worthy, but I remember I was going to this conference, and people were feeling God's power, and some were being healed, and it was just a real amazing time. And the Lord just put his finger on my chest and exposed my pride. And I was weeping for days. Yes. And so I've gone through a process of, you said, how do you help this 50-year-old? You can share things, but if he's not willing, you can't force people. Mm-hmm. And in my case, I had to learn a bunch of hard lessons along the way.
Yeah.
And I had no one mentoring me in terms of, I had people that occasionally would speak into my life, right. But I went back and said, okay, Jesus, how do we do this? And so, for example, Jesus rarely gives steps, but in peacemaking, he says, first get the log out of your own eye before you look at the stuff in the other person's. So that means you got to deal with your own heart.
Yeah.
So, I've looked at my parents. They were separated twice, and I'm sure I've got battle scars. And, my dad was a judge. So, every day at home was like court, Mm-hmm. He actually softened in his old age. We had a beautiful relationship then, but so I know there are wounds I've had, but I think we need to point out a long-term healing process and how God shapes and leads us. That's my faith perspective.
That's good.
And I will say, Robert, for me, my wife would watch me in leadership meetings. She'd be in there, we'd have team meetings. And when someone's confronting me, she said it was so funny. I would lean back, cross my arms, go like this. And so she challenged me. She says, Rick, you got to be open to their input. And that was a turning point where I looked at the book of Proverbs.
Yeah.
Just wisdom literature. And it's so practical. And there's about 20 verses that says the wise man receives reproof, and he who does not receive advice or listen is stupid.
Yeah.
20 times and foolish. And so I go, Lord, I don't want to be foolish.
Right.
So,
right.
Like I said, not movie worthy, not sexy, but just one step in front of the other, trying to follow Jesus, trying to learn, and God exposes. And when I think through in every leadership transition I've been through, there's been deep heart work that God's had to do in me to prepare me for the next. And people said, Rick, that must have been so painful. And I go, yeah, you know, I mean, it was very painful, but I wanted to grow and learn. And so, yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
It is very challenging in a leadership role when you are, and I think we all are in leadership capacities in our own respective spaces, when you're doing your best, you're putting out your best, and then somebody says your best is not good enough.
Right.
And then they have the solution, and you're like, what?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
So that does take. I just had this experience. I manage a staff of like 18 people, and I'm doing well, innovative, whatnot. And then they're like, well, we need better this, we need better. And I listened for 2 days, them tell me what was wrong.
Yeah. The manhood was hurt.
I was hurt, brother. I was hurt.
That pain bearing. Leadership is pain bearing. Yeah.
I'm better for it. John, what are some of the hurdles? Because in your book, you start talking about your journey. What is that journey? What has that journey looked like? And what some of the hurdles personally that you have had to overcome in your journey to manhood?
Okay. Well,
as a father and into fatherhood.
Oh, into fatherhood too. Yeah. Well, first, I've been a father for the last 20 years. And when I first became a father, it was unexpected. I was in the streets. I was running around. I was selling drugs. I was, doing all kinds of things in the streets that weren't productive at all. I was facing 25 years at one point. I just turned 18. So before that, I got caught up into the era of, like, back in the 90s when I was growing up, man, it was all about, where I was at, it was all about making money.
No doubt.
And, it was easy for somebody like me with a low self-esteem to just hop right on into that lane.
Right.
And you, even from that era, you would hear rappers talk about, they don't talk, they let their watch talk for them, their shoes talk for them. Like, so that was the mind frame of everybody in my neighborhood, everybody in my circle. We was all trying to get rich and if you didn't have no money, you can't talk to me. That, just a whole bunch of just a persona.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I grew up with crack cocaine in my household. My stepdad was a big abuser. So there'd be times I come home and the house would be stripped, everything gone, VCRs and TVs gone, everything. We'd have to hop up and leave, and just all kinds of things, like trauma early on in my childhood. But I honestly think, and anybody that knows me from back in the day, they will tell me that my son actually saved my life. My mom would tell you to this day, man, that and I, when it came time for me to be a father, I look back at everything that I've been through, and I said, look, I know what not to do. I might not know what to do. I definitely know what not to do. So I use that as a stepping stone. One thing that Mr. Darnell touched on earlier, which really hit home with me, was communication early with my son's mom. I wish I would have knew more about postpartum depression. In women. I wish I would have knew more about just relationships, period. Just like Darnell, I came from a background where, I've seen abuse all my life. Yep. There wasn't a whole week that went by without no arguing, this and that, so that was very, very traumatic. But I wish that I would have had more of an example of how to treat a woman at that time in my life, But things happened. I ended up taking my son full time, and man, that really just changed my life to the fullest. And I had to grow up quick. I had to figure things out, and I just a lot of that time period, which I'm happy that I had the strength to do so, but I had to change my playground. I had to change the people I was associating with. Yeah. And I did that. You know, a lot of people aren't strong enough to do that. And yeah. I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I was able to, you know, have that strength. I don't know where it came from.
But because it was no longer about you, it was about your son.
Yeah. It was all about.
I think we mentioned earlier about about with certain things when fatherhood comes, it's natural. It's instinctive.
It's natural.
It's instinctive. And so what I'm curious about and want you kind of to highlight is kind of what were some of the hurdles you had to kind of mentally overcome to raise your son the way you have and successfully have?
Self-esteem, man. Self-esteem. Like I realized at an early age, you know, some of the things that I dealt with, like sitting in a classroom full of European kids and the teacher go over the lesson and then she'll come single me out and say, hey, John, did you understand what I just said? I'm like, yeah, why am I being singled out? You know, little situations like that, as far as like explaining to my son early that there might be some dialogue, there might be some wording that's used that is not healthy for you. Right. But you got to understand that some of the teachers, they don't understand you, you know, they don't understand your background. So, you know, just as long as you know who you are. And that's one thing that I instilled in him early is who he is. And that's a big hurdle that I had because I didn't know back, man. Look at me, man. I got red hair, freckles, you know. I had a fro back in the day, you know. I mean, I just look different than 99.99% of my peers. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's a big hurdle that I had to jump. And just when it came to fatherhood, when it came to me dealing with another human being, I just had to explain to my son. I just had to make sure that he knew where he stands at in life, who he is. No doubt. And that way, can't nobody sway him in either direction. He stands planted. He knows, you know, where he comes from, this and that. Because I didn't know. I didn't meet my biological dad until I was 33. You know what I'm saying? When I met him, it just light bulb went off like boom. That's where I get my hands from. That's where I get my walk from. You know, that's where I get this and that from. So, you know, I didn't see that until I was grown. You know, and I'm pretty sure that had a whole bunch to do with some early pains in my childhood, you know, this and that. I just wanted to make sure my son didn't go through that. So
no doubt, breaking the cycle, man.
Yeah. So to sum it up, man, just basically just instilling in him constantly who he is. Like when he does something, I would just, you know, use him as an example. I show a mirror, like, yo, you see how you just did this, you know, whatever the situation might be, whether it be, you know, him solving a problem. I just made sure that he was aware that, yo, you have the ability. You just solved that. Look what you did. You know what I mean? And a lot of these kids, and I didn't have that. I didn't have somebody pointing out to me the good or the bad that I was doing. You see what I'm saying? So that was a big difference that got me through.
So I want to ask two more questions, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. So I think the first question that I want to ask is, you highlighted something, John, is the importance of communication. How do we empower fathers and sons to have an authentic relationship? I grew up in the South, and there wasn't a lot of talking at all. It was, you know, it was do as I say do. It doesn't matter what I do. You do as I say do, when I say do, how I say do. If I did it wrong, you know. And Darnell, you're an educator. I want you to kind of, you know, hit on this question first. Is one, what are some of the tools that fathers need to raise sons now?
I think so. I have a 5-year-old son, so I think part of my prayer and my focused energy has been, how can I do to him and do by him differently than what was done for me. So for example, I think you just hit the analogy of, if my son gets out of line, I'm going to discipline him. But one thing I've learned to do from mentors of my own is to sit him down, to have a conversation, to help him understand, yeah, you about to get a whooping, but here's why. Know that I still love you. After I've disciplined you, come here, give me a hug. Daddy's still there for you. Here's why I did it. Do you understand? All right, let's move on. So he understands that his identity is not in what just happened to him. His identity is in why, not the what. A lot of times, if we're not careful as fathers, we didn't learn to communicate why we're doing what we're doing. All we know is, like you say, sit down, shut up, don't talk, just be spoken to. But once again, there's a part of that in my household that says, okay, mom and dad are in charge. We're the adults, you're the children. But there's much more conversation in my household than what I experienced. So, one of the big things in my company is breaking the cycle. We can't continue generational curses, one generation after another, after another. But how can we say, with my generation, I will be different, a different father, a different husband than what I've seen and what I've experienced? I'm making it up, some of it as I go, because as we know, as parents, there's no solidified blueprint. But we can have a plan. We can have a template to say, I'm not going to be angry when I discipline my son.
Yeah.
I'm not going to holler as much as I was hollered at.
Man, I hated
that. Oh, that's such a chord, man.
So,
I hated that. I said so. I hated that growing up. It's like, what do you mean? Like, it's your job to tell me why. You know what I mean? And just to, reiterate there too, is being a young father, you almost have to listen as much as you talk, and so I had to get an understanding of how my son's brain worked early. Why is he asking why? Why is he this and that? Why? I listened to him. I try to get in his head like, okay, now this is the approach that I need to do for him. Instead of just saying that and just disregarding of what he has to say. Because, and then also, like me personally, I still have a real issue with my speech. Like I used to stutter like crazy, and I still do a little bit. And I think a lot of that was because when I was younger, I would be cut off quick.
Yeah.
Within the conversation. So it was like I just learned how to just stop talking. And I never wanted that to be me and my son's dialogue. I always wanted to be able to listen to him and let him speak his whole thought process through instead of me just, blurting in and just cutting him off.
That's good.
So that's so one way to do communication or to help is just let them talk and then listen, and then you're able to diagnose, you're able to do all kinds of things, but you can't do anything until you listen.
Yes. So Rick, this is where you come in, and because Rick is a mediator. So I'm interested, Rick, when in these dynamics, how do we as fathers, how in our sometimes our anger, sometimes in our fear, sometimes in our disappointment and our misunderstandings with our sons and some of the decisions they may be making or they do make.
Right.
I'm experiencing that. I have a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Rick, how do we mediate that? How do we listen well?
Yeah.
How do we interact?
I think we start with learning the 7 hardest words there are. I was wrong. Will you forgive me?
Come on now. Come on.
We don't cuss words. We don't.
Yeah. No, seriously. I mean, what I have to model.
Yeah.
And by the way, my oldest daughter says, John, yeah, Dad, when we grew up, it was always because that's the way it is, So
yeah. I hate
when I'm listening to you, my oldest daughter is the most like me, so it's very funny. But anyway, I think now where were we? Oh yeah.
You said the most 7 words.
Oh yeah, I was wrong. Will you forgive me? Learning to do that shows that there's real relationship, and we don't always have things right. Now, also though, you got to be careful, because as the adult, you have the power. I mean, there's a power differential. So if I say, all right, Darnell, will you forgive me? You know, I was wrong. Will you forgive me? And he goes, yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah, you know, and what can he say? And sometimes my wife will say, I'm not ready yet. I go, oh, okay, that's good.
Right.
But the point is learning. I think we have to model.
Yeah.
And then I want to say that if we could just take the lessons learned in this hour, it could have a great little book. I mean, respect, empowerment, all the things we're talking about is so thrilling. And I'd like to add at least one short story. Again, history's different, but in many cultures of the world, there's a transition between being a boy and a man.
Rites of passage,
the rites of passage. And the reason I'm actually here is because of my nephew. Now, I hope I don't get emotional, but I'm an old guy, you know. And,
it's all good.
Yeah. But at 12 years old, I sat my nephew down. We had a cigar, and we had the man talk about sex and how you're going to treat women.
Good.
And I did not realize, he said, like, he's 30-something now, and he's saying, Uncle Rick, that was such a turning point in my life. I treated him as a man. We talked about being, loving to women, not just be the badass, and being respectful, those kind of things. And I had no idea the impact that had.
That's good.
And he's telling me, and he and I are very close. So he's like a son.
No doubt.
To hear his story, and he says, now my son is, it's so funny. His son is almost 12. And the wife says, well, you're not going to have a cigar with him at 12. He says, hell yes, I am. No, there's nothing magic about the cigar or the age. But at some point, that's the empowerment theme, Darnell,
yes.
You know, that we say, yes. and men are protectors, and men respect. And you just review the things we've been talking about. Men have to be strong to deal with their heart issues, you know.
Yeah.
So
I love the intentionality. I love that intentionality.
Yeah.
That was powerful. Men have to deal with their heart. And I think, and I noticed this about myself. I have 3 children, and I realized a lot of the times when I would fly off the rail with my children, most of the times it was motivated by my own fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was motivated by my own fear or my own preconceived history or my own junk. It's nothing that they did. Really, they're just being children.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just being children.
Yeah.
And so that journey, and I think you guys hitting on this is powerful, and I want to say thank you for that. My last question is, or my last kind of thing I want to kind of ask you guys is, as we wrap up, what has been, when you as a man and you go through all these situations, all these circumstances in life, there are these mantras, there are these pearls that kind of develop in your life, and you kind of live by them.
Right.
For each one of you, what are your mantras? What are your pearls? What are the things you want to leave your sons and the next generation as it relates to their identity, their manhood, who they are? I want y'all to dig deep and really ask you, what are your mantras? What are the things you live by? What are the things that pull you up and make you wake up in the morning to live and fight another day?
Yeah.
One, I have many actually, but one that really sticks out to me that I really live by is you just got to keep going, period. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Regardless of what happens, regardless of where you at, you got people that are looking towards you. You got people that look up to you. You just got to keep going. You got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, you got to move. You got to stay. Got to maneuver.
Yeah.
That's good. Darnell.
I mean, it's as simple as that. Sometimes we overthink things. Sometimes we just put too much on it. Simple. Gotta keep moving.
For me, I'll say two things. One is giving up is not an option. When it comes to my marriage, when it comes to my work ethic, when it comes to my commitment and my dedication, we have a phrase, Team Weathersby. My wife, my two children, we're a team. And everything we do is for the betterment of our team, not for the individual, but for the betterment of the team. So when we have a bad day and we're talking about our day at the dinner table, how can Team Weathersby be better? We might have had a bad day, but no matter what the world is telling you, you're part of Team Weathersby and you're going to be okay because we're here to support one another. We're here to encourage one another. So just creating that legacy that says, no matter what chaos is going on out there, you're safe in here because we don't give up, because we are committed, because we do persevere. Not everything's going to be good. Not everything's going to be easy, but because you're part of a team, you have the support you need to get through anything that life happens to throw your way. So just encouraging both my son and my daughter with that legacy to say, you can be the man God has called you to be boldly, and you can be the woman God has called you to be with confidence. And that looks different, but they're both coming from that solid foundation of I can be vulnerable and I can be strong at the same time because I have the support of two loving parents. So it's not perfect, but I mean, God has definitely breathed life on it for the last 15 years, and I'm blessed for it. So
it's good to hear, man.
What about you, Rick?
I already gave my pearls, the First Corinthians, but I will say that at this point, and we're at stages of life. I'm grandfather.
Yeah.
And there's still a role. Grandfather wants to mentor his grandsons and granddaughter, And so wisdom is so important at this stage.
Sage.
The stage of the sage. And it says, wisdom from above is first pure, peaceable, gentle, reasonable, which means willing to submit, etc. Gentle, impartial, sincere, peacemakers who sow in peace raise a harvest of righteousness.
Good.
So, the whole concept of the book of Proverbs, that's James chapter 3, 17 and 18. That's my pearl, that if you teach relationships and how to work through and be wise, it's going to be a much better world.
Good.
I think for me, some of the people that I've mentored, there's one thing that tends to come out of me a lot. Going through hardships, trials, there's kind of two mantras. One is that I realize that he walks with me.
That's good.
It adds, for me, it means something. Like life is going to go throw challenges at you.
No doubt.
Hands up. Even the Bible talks about the days are full of trouble. They're full of it.
Yeah.
The thing is, in the bedrock of my existence and my ability to get up is realizing I don't have to face this by myself.
That's good.
And so I take that and I hone that, whether it's with my children, with health, with family, whatever, is that I don't have to do this alone. Right. And then when I've made mistakes or I've messed up, and I'm kind of in the same corner with John, is that all I can do is live from here.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. After I've apologized, after I've acknowledged I messed up, I just got to get up.
That's good.
Stand up. Keep going.
And I got to live from here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I appreciate that. And just for the sake of our conversation, our dialogue, what is one thing, just one thing really quickly, that you wish somebody would have told you so that you could have potentially avoided through? And I'll say it like this. If you could have a conversation with your younger self, what would you tell them? What would you tell them? For me, I would say to myself, Robert, chill, relax. It's gonna be okay.
Right.
That's what I would tell myself. What is it for you, Rick?
I would share the things I've shared here already.
I hear you.
Amen and amen.
John, what about you, brother?
Yeah, pretty much the same as Rick. I would definitely share some of the things here. Also, just let people be who they are too, instead of, people change when they're ready to change.
Right.
And we can't change everybody, so it's one thing that I wish I would have knew back then too, because at some point, sometimes as men, we take on other people's hurts and other people's pains and everything, and sometimes that's added stress.
Right.
That's added stress that we don't need. We can't change that. We can't change certain things. Our higher powers have certain things that they want done. He wants done, and it is what it is. So.
Right. I hear you, Darnell. What is it for you?
Oh man, tension and conflict are necessary. I think coming from my background, I'm a peacemaker by default because I saw so much dysfunction. So instead of becoming passive, which is my kind of default, even as an adult, I'm quick to try to make peace as opposed to lean into conflict and say, this tension is okay. Yeah. And now I have the tools to navigate this conflict in a healthy manner that I didn't always have.
Yeah.
So I think if I could be my younger self, I would say, don't be afraid of the tension.
Yes.
Don't be afraid of the conflict because it's necessary to reach the result that you need, to reach the goals that you're trying to reach. Yeah. So I think if I could speak back, I would say, don't fear the conflict, but navigate it appropriately.
Yeah, that's a part of growing.
Yeah,
that's growing pain. Yeah, no doubt.
Well, once again, I want to tell you guys, thank you so much.
Thank you
for spending time with this live webinar. Yeah. Hey guys, I want you to take a moment, go get John's book. Tell them the name of your book and where you can find it.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks for the plug. It's 8 Conversations to Have with Your Son. It's out right now on Amazon Kindle. We got the audio book coming out. I think it drops this Friday. And
that's what's up.
The actual website is www.8conversationstohave.com. You can pick it up right there. Ship it out first thing in the morning for you.
So, that's what's up.
Darnell, what
Thank you.
Right, it's good, man. We got Journey to Fatherhood right here. Letter to My Unborn Child. All new dads, if they're navigating being an early dad, learning how to journal. These are 9 months of journal entries helping you navigate that transition into fatherhood. And of course, if you go to our website, The Cycle Ends With Me, theleadonemovement.com. Everybody has a generational curse they're trying to break, and we want to support you and empower you as you break your generational curse. So let's do it together.
That's good. Rick, you have a plethora of resources as well.
Well, I'm not as cool as these guys. I didn't bring my book here, but it's called Peace Catalysts, Resolving Conflict in Our Families, Organizations, and Communities.
We can Google Peace Catalyst. And
Rick Love on Amazon, or write me and we'll make it happen.
No doubt.
Great. And
I just want to say I appreciate all of y'all.
Me too.
Last hour has really, really been beneficial.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
I feel like I'm leaving with it feels like a huge conference, and I'm just getting all the information and getting all the life experiences.
Yeah.
But I want to say thank you so much, guys, for taking time out of your schedule. Thank you, guys, for everyone who listened. Listen, if you have any questions, or you have anything you want to say, comments, listen, do not be afraid to reach out. You can leave comments below, and all of us will respond. We'll be responding to your comments, your questions.
Definitely.
Once again, thank you so much, John, Darnell, Rick. I appreciate you. Guys, you all have a good one. I look forward to seeing you guys in the Man-Made group, the Made Men group. and you'll be hearing some big news from us later on. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
All right.
Bless you.
All right.
It's awesome.
All right.
Peace.
Have a good one, fellas.